Hi, welcome to Actualol. I'm Jon Purkis. These are some of the board games I've been playing lately. Starting with Detective Club, which comes in a metal tin, but don't let that put you off. This is a party game from one of the designers of Mysterium, which is one of my favorite games. And it has some similarities to that game. And I'll explain why. So you have a bunch of these art cards, much like you would get in Mysterium or Dixit, lovely surreal artwork, and you are given a role. So one player is giving out these notebooks for the round, and they are going to give a notebook to every player, every other player, and all of them will have a word in except for one. They will have the same word except for one notebook, which will be blank. And that person is the spy, effectively. They don't know what everyone else knows. So if you think of Spyfall or Fake Artist Goes to New York, it works very similarly to that. They've put that word in because it's going to relate to some cards that they have in their hand that they're going to play. So they will play one card down, and they've got this little bit of cardboard to show that this is their first card. They play that card, and then everyone else will take it in turns to play a card from their hand into their one slot to show that they know what the word is, that they are playing a card that fits the description, just like this card. And so you go around, everyone plays a card, and then everyone plays a second card. And so you're trying to spot who is the spy, who doesn't know the word. What's interesting about this game and why I love it is that then you reveal what the word is. And so the spy now knows what it is. They're not trying to guess what the word is, but they're trying to fit in. So then you go around the circle and everyone explains to the group why their cards fit. Why does this card fit the word windy? Oh, it's because these shoelaces are like blowing around, and oh, because this, well, they're out in the air, and because look, her dress is like slightly moving, and you're trying to make it sound believable. Now, sometimes you will be a good guy, you'll know the word, but you just had a terrible hand of cards, and so there is some, you just have to be like, well, look, guys, I had a bad hand, just believe me, yeah. And so in that instance, there is some sense of bluffing or trying to read people. Are they telling the truth or not? Then there's also looking at what cards have people played. Like when the main person played this one with the piano, but let's say that the word was actually child. Why was it that they then played a card very clearly had a trumpet on it? Because they thought that it was music related. Because all they were doing was going off the art on the card and they didn't know the word. So you're trying to look for little clues in what people have played. And sometimes they'll get lucky and they'll have played amazing cards, or they'll just do a great job of explaining it. But it just creates that dynamic that I love in party games where you're all discussing with each other. There's a bit of accusation, arguing, but it's not as like brutal and mean and intense as something like the Resistance. And you play around and then you go again and there's a new spy, and it's quick and it's snappy, and I love trying to interpret these types of cards. Everyone that I've played this with has had a blast. A lot of people saying, I prefer this to Dixit, I prefer this to Mysterium. I mean, I prefer this to Dixit. I don't know about Mysterium, I love them both. I love that this brings these art cards into a different type of game, and I can't wait for this game to be available to a wider audience, because I think it's like right up there with party games. It's one of the best of the year, and I would highly recommend checking out if you get the chance to. So that is Detective Club. Harvest Dice is a roll and write game, and it honestly wouldn't be one of these videos without having a roll and write game. This one is got a farming theme where you are planting lettuces, tomatoes, and carrots. And the way you're doing that is by picking one of these dice. So on your turn, you will take one of these dice. So I've got a carrot here, it's orange, and I will have to place it in the 5 column of my little sheet. Then from then onwards, every time, so I draw a carrot in here, and that's one of the sort of little cute things about the game, is that it challenges you to draw these vegetables. So I've drawn my carrot, and then from then on, if I was to ever take another carrot, it would have to be adjacent to the one I've got. So I could only take a 5, a 4, or a 6 currently of a carrot. So I can look ahead and see, oh, maybe if these dice come back round to me, then I could put another carrot down this turn. Interestingly though, the value of these vegetables changes, and it changes based on the dice that is left over. So everyone's taking it in turns to take one of these dice, draft these dice. And I would say that generally I find dice drafting and roll and write games to slow them down a bit. Like, it's not that I have any problem with that decision, but it's just I prefer roll and write games to have that simultaneous play of everyone using the same results. And this one does suffer a little bit because of that, but I enjoy it at 2 players, and so you're not really experiencing much downtime at 2 players, and it's not that complex of a game for it to really slow it down at 3 or 4 either. Everyone's taking dice, and then the one that is left, that vegetable will increase in value, and so you will cross off a bit by the colour that is left. So there's this interesting balance. If you take loads of carrots, and you never leave the carrot die to the end, well then they're only worth 1 point. So what's the point in filling all your field with carrots if you're only going to get a point for each one? So you want to be balancing getting the vegetables with actually improving the value of them. And that's where going last in a round can be really vital, because you will get to pick potentially which vegetable is going to increase in value. Ideally, you want to have the most of that vegetable, because then of course you're going to score loads of points. There's also other ways to get points. If you complete a row, every row you complete is 5 points. You can also feed your pig. So if you ever take a dice and you can't put it on your board because of the adjacency rules or because it's all full up, you can feed your pig, and it's equal to the number of pips. So a higher die is better. And so if I took a 6, I would cross off all of this row. That then gives me points at the end of the game, but it gives me a power that I can use to plus or minus the pips on a dice, giving me a bit of leeway on a future turn. So that's another little thing that you can do with your dice, and a nice little addition to just add that little bit of extra thinkiness to the game. It feels, I suppose, a little bit different than your average roll and write, in the sense that there's almost like this commodity thing of like which stock is going to go highest, and then can you get into that stock? It doesn't have that really going for a thing and then getting, there's no minus points in this game. But the fact that it feels quite different, I think, is the reason that I've kept it around for so long, and it's staying in my collection. It's a nice one to play in the pub, plays well at 2. So yeah, I would recommend Harvest Dice if you like roll and write games. This one's a cute one. Hollywood: The Golden Age is a game that I picked up at Essen. This is an older one from Reiner Knizia. It was originally called Dream Factory, and this is the Spanish version. It's got really nice artwork, and the game is language independent, so I'm not sure how available it will be to buy, but hopefully it will become more available. I believe they only have the license for Spanish, but like I say, you can get the rules online, and there's actually no text in the game, so it doesn't have any impact on the gameplay. What you're trying to do is create films in Hollywood's Golden Age. So you'll start the game with a bunch of films. So for example, you might have Some Like It Hot, King Kong, Casablanca, and these are different genres as well. And you're trying to put together the right bits for your film. So for example, King Kong needs a director, and it needs a cameraman, and it needs some music, and it needs a seamstress, and you can add a star to it. You don't have to with the star, but you can to get extra points. The way you're getting stuff is auctions. So basically you go through the round and all these different auctions will happen. First, you'll be auctioning off these things. And so, for example, here there's 2 composers and a seamstress. So, well, you're like, oh, I need a composer for Casablanca, and I need it for King Kong. Yeah, I guess. And so you're bidding, you've got your money behind a screen, and you're just bidding like a normal auction. The person who pays the most gets it, and they get all of the tiles, and then they can put them on any films that they want to. They will pay the money, and the money gets shared out between the other players. So you don't want to go spending too much, because then the other players will get rich. And so there's an interesting balance of trying to make money, raise bids in the game so that you'll get money coming in, so that then you can see what's coming up. You really need to bid on that thing, so you'll get enough money to be able to do that. I love that it follows a real life theme, and all the actors and actresses in it are real actors and actresses from that time. Same for directors. So here's Ava Gardner, and Marilyn Monroe is here. And Marilyn Monroe, for example, is a star that will get me 3 points if I put her into my picture. And then when I complete a picture, it scores, and I'll get a number of points for it. And I'm trying to get the best movie. So I'm trying to outdo the other players for that season, for that year. If I get the best movie for that year, I win an Oscar for it. And you've got these little standees that represent 5 and 10 points, depending on what you win. So you're trying to get the best movie of the year, but then also you're trying to get the best movie for like the whole game. You also want to make the first comedy or the first action film or the first drama, and also make the best comedy, etc. at the end of the game. So the auctions all work in a very similar way. There is one style which I really like, which is where you go to these parties. So there's 2 parties on the board, and these tiles are face down, so you don't see them until you walk into the party, which I think is a nice thematic touch. And then they get revealed, and you each get to pick one of those tiles, but the order in which you get to pick them is based on basically how popular you are. So how many actors, famous actors, do you have currently starring in your films? If you've got the most, you will get first pick. So you've got the best connections. Everyone wants to talk to you at the party, so you're able to hire the best cameraman, and then everyone else gets the dregs, and you take it in turns based on how popular you are. I really love that. It's just a neat thematic touch, but also has plenty to think about, because you really need to focus on making sure you've got these actors and stars so that you get first dibs on stuff like that. There's these contract tiles which work as kind of wilds. They can go anywhere. And each of these tiles has stars on it. So you might be like, I need a seamstress. I'll put that seamstress in, but it's only 1 star. And then later on, you have the opportunity to get a 3-star one. And you can put a tile on top of another one, but of course, it just feels like a bit of a waste. It's a theme that I really love, but actually, it's a great game in terms of just a simple auction system, trying to get the things that you really need, bidding for them, hoping that you've got the right money, then that sharing out of money. It just works, and it's no great surprise really, because this is coming from Rainer Knizia, one of the best designers, but also one of the best designers of auction games. And I knew that this was a classic, and I'd never played it until now, and I absolutely love it. This is definitely staying in my collection, and if you get a chance to get it, it seems to me that this is by far the best looking version of this game that has ever existed of this game. The artwork is wonderful. I really like the style they've used. That looks like photos of the actors and actresses, but they've sort of just tampered them with enough to give it a bit of a stylistic feel to it. Yeah, so I would highly recommend Hollywood Golden Age. Illusion is a very simple card game, which is from designer Wolfgang Warsch, who designed The Mind, and that was the reason I was interested in it. And it's about trying to understand optical illusions, really, to try and work out which card has the most of a specific type of color in it. So you'll be given a random color by the game, so it could be blue, red, green, etc., yellow, and this arrow here is pointing to show that you have to play cards in ascending order so that it increases in color. So for example, there would be a start card, and then you would have a card, you would get a card, and you would have to decide where to put it. Do I put it left of this card because it's got less yellow in it, or do I put it right because it's got more yellow in it? So that one, I think that's got more than, and then the next person will take the next card and yeah, that one seems like it's got more than that one. But as you go on, it's going to get trickier and trickier to fit in because things can just seem really close. Like this yellow one here is very hard to tell. I would say it's probably going in here. So you keep going until somebody challenges it, until somebody thinks that the last person's made a mistake. And then you reveal. So on the backs of the cards, it tells you the percentage of each color. So this card has 7% yellow. Then we've got 19% yellow. That is a lot. I think we're going to have a mistake. Yeah, then we got 13% and 16%. So this one had way more yellow in it. So a mistake was made. And the person who called them out would get a point because they challenged at the right time. So that's the whole game, really. You're just trying to get a grip on these optical illusions. And it reminds me a bit of Timeline, the trivia game where you are placing things that happened into timeline order, into chronological order. And there's some guessing in that game as well. But in that game, you're guessing with a bit of knowledge. In this game, obviously, you're guessing just based on what you can see. I think it works really well for what it is, but I found that it I don't have that much desire to keep coming back to it. There's definitely real challenge in the game. I just found that I'd maybe rather play Timeline or another filler card game. So that is Illusion. Rebel Knox is a trick-taking game, and this is in the same universe as Capital Lux, which was a card game from the same company, Aporta Games, a couple of years ago at Essen. It's got some really nice artwork from Kwanchai Moria, and it has this theme of sort of a dystopian future. And in Rebel Knox, it's a trick-taking game where you're playing on teams, and you're assigned the team at random depending on whether you receive one of these rebel cards. So if you get one of these, you're a rebel, and then the other team are going against you. So generally, in maybe like a 6-player game, you're going to have 3 rebels and 3 not rebels, but it really does depend on how those cards get divvied up, because it might end up there's actually only 2 rebels because one person has got 2 of the rebel cards. The card play is pretty much like any trick-taking game in the sense that the first person will set the suit, that will determine the trump suit for that round, and then you play cards. You can't play the trump suit and if you have the actual suit that you have to follow, and of course the highest number wins. There are some extra tricky things. For example, there's the assassin guns. They will kill the highest card in the game. So if you think that the other team is winning, you could play an assassin card just to take out their top card so that maybe the second-most card is actually someone on your team. You also have these infiltrator cards, which at the end of the round, the person who played the lowest card will get to steal cards from another player. And that actually gives them the opportunity to switch teams because they could steal the rebel card. Then you've got cards with flags on, and those are points. So if you win the trick and you get a card with a flag on it, that's getting you points for your team. The reason that you want to win the trick for that round is because a location has been up for grabs, and each one of the locations has different criteria. So they will change the round slightly. So some are worth more points than others. So for example, like this one says at the end of the round, all of your flags are minus points. This one adds an extra assassin. I like what this game adds to trick-taking. It puts you in teams so you can be discussing about what you might do. Do you think you can win this trick? Can you play an assassin to stop them? There's more table talk than your average trick-taking game, and I love team games generally. I just felt like the twists weren't enough to make me feel like I was playing a revolutionary trick-taking game. And I think just the issue with this one for me is that I can find trick-taking games a little bit dull, just sort of numbered cards. Oh, yeah, there's definitely stuff to think about. I don't find them that exciting. And this one adds a few things, all of which I think are cool, but somehow they're not enough to change my mind about trick-taking games. My friends that I played it with already liked it, and I could totally understand why people would like this. It's got lovely artwork and a nice box, and so if you like trick-taking games, I would recommend you check it out. It just wasn't for me. That's Rebel Knox. Barren Park is a Tetris-style puzzle game where you're laying tiles, much like Patchwork, Cottage Garden, Indian Summer, Spring Meadow. This one's from a different designer to those ones, and it is a theme where you're building a bear park. You're taking tiles and you're trying to fit them on your board. You start off with quite a simple square, and the way you get more tiles is by placing on top of certain icons. So if I was to place on top of this white icon here, I can pick from the white row here, and I would pick one. These all have points on, so I might pick this one because it's got the most points. In fact, I wouldn't do that because it would be bad for me. So let's say I take this one, and then when I place down on this certain symbol, I can expand my park. And so at the end of the game, you will have a park that is 4 bigger tiles wide, or in any direction. And then you've got this orange symbol, which allows you to pick from these really high scoring tiles, but they're quite funky shapes that might be tricky for you to place. And so you're trying to plan where you place your pieces so that you make sure that you keep getting the pieces you need coming in. So there's this interesting looking ahead with the tiles that you place. So you're like, oh yeah, okay, I've put down on a white one, so then I will pick this next one because that will allow me to then place down on that orange one, and so on. So you just want to make sure you've always got tiles coming to you like that. There's also these smaller tiles here that can fill in gaps, and you're trying to finish off your squares. There's always one space remaining where there's like a pit. You're trying to finish that off because when you finish it, you get a bear statue that's worth points, and there's a bit of a race because these points will diminish. So the first person to get a bear statue will get like 16 points, and then the points will go down. So you're racing to complete things faster. So I tend to like these types of Tetris games. I think there's something fun about these interlocking puzzles, and this one is very approachable, really simple. I think anyone could play this game. And if you want to make it a bit more advanced, then you can introduce these goals where you will get points. You'll race towards completing things such as having 6 of these green tiles touching each other, or having 3 koala sanctuaries in your park, or by having one of each different type of shape in the white section in your park. So as soon as you complete those, you get points, and again, those points will diminish for the people that complete that goal second or third. I like this game. I would recommend this game to somebody that wants to try this type of genre. I like the artwork. I like that it's a relatively small box. But I personally prefer Spring Meadow and Patchwork because those games are a little bit more mean in terms of how hard it is to fit things in. Like the shapes here are fairly standard, but also you're also going to be playing with the same ones every time you play. Like these are always the same. In Spring Meadow, there's a wider variety of types of shapes, but you also may never see some of them because of the random draw of them. I also like in Spring Meadow and in Patchwork how you're forced into this framework. So that if you get up to an edge and you just made a pig's ear of how you're going to fit it all in, that's your problem and you'll pay for it. Whereas in this, you can just expand and put another tile in to the side, and where things weren't quite working out, now you've got loads of space to move into. And I just prefer having that fixed board because I think it makes it harder. So when I played this game, I never really felt frustrated. There's definitely stuff to think about, and I didn't win the game. It wasn't like I was good at it. You're thinking about, oh, how do I get the most points and how do I plan ahead? There's definitely challenge there into what you think, but I was never like tearing my hair about what was available, or, oh, I'll never make this work. And those are the feelings. I know that doesn't make a game sound enjoyable, but those are the feelings that I get in Spring Meadow and Patchwork. And I think that's what brings those games alive. And it's the same with real life Tetris of like, I really need that piece. And in Barren Park, you don't really need a piece. You're really just going for stuff that's going to get you the most points. And it doesn't it just doesn't have that same desperation and that same excitement that I get with those other games. So totally understand why everyone raves about this game. I think it's clean, it's streamlined, it just works, and there is a challenge in trying to get the most points and how can you best organize it. But I want something that's just got a bit more. And certainly with something like Spring Meadow, you've got that extra thinkiness of how to get those holes connecting, and I just don't see that same challenge in Barren Park. That's it. Those are the board games that I've been playing lately. I'll put links to where you can buy them in the description below. I'm Jon Purkis. Thanks for watching.